Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for listening to the 284th ever episode of the Missouri Sports Podcast, brought to you by 106 Apparel and recording from the MSP studio in beautiful Springfield, Missouri. I'm one of your hosts, Cameron Albert, alongside my good friend and fellow Mizzou fan, Kyle DeVries. How you doing today, Kyle?
I'm doing great, Cameron. Thanks for having me on. How are you today?
I'm doing well. It turned summer all of a sudden, and so
nice.
I'm living it up. And
Short sleeves today?
Oh, yeah. For the foreseeable future. Not going back.
As far as the eye can see.
Yes. Yeah. What have you been up to?
Well, we were just talking a few minutes ago. We've been listening to some weird music.
Oh, sure.
We've been going down some interesting paths and sharing some music lately.
You know who we need some recommendations from?
Who's that?
Is Patrick, if you're listening. One of our first ever Patreon subscribers at
Yes.
the $2 level.
Yes.
Going way back.
Yes.
I've been listening to more like progressive rock. I've been really into Yes lately. And just like a couple months ago, I started this whole blues rock playlist where I was like following the trajectory of blues rock from its roots. Super fun stuff.
Yeah.
But now it's got me, when you get into the 70s and stuff, then you start getting prog. And, just exploring all that is so fun.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been going down some interesting rabbit holes, listening to some strange stuff we never thought we'd hear, but it's been a fun journey.
If any of that sounds familiar, leave us some recommendations in the comments.
Yeah.
Having a 2-year-old, I think I've mentioned this before, but having a 2-year-old where we're trying to not have the TV on all the time. So it just listening to music just kind of fills that gap a little bit.
For sure.
Where we can avoid screens, and putting on entire albums works really well because it's not like, I feel like playlists for a 2-year-old, it's like catching their attention again every 3 minutes with a new thing. And it's like, I don't know. There's just so many different ways you can overstimulate a toddler.
Yeah.
And listening to a full album all the way through just kind of like settles them back down, I think. That's what works for us anyway.
That's cool.
So you ought to be able to enjoy that.
Getting to that point.
What all are we going to talk about today, Kyle? We're going to talk about, obviously, the big news of the week, Desireé Reed-Francois leaving for Arizona. And we're going to update everybody on how bad the basketball team is. Before we do all that, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, leave us a review wherever you listen to us. And, of course, you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Missouri Sports Pod. Kyle, the basketball team lost 2 more games, this time to Ole Miss and Tennessee. The Tennessee game, the first 10 minutes of the game was some of the ugliest basketball you've ever seen in your life. To the point where, like, Tom Hart was just, like, publicly making fun of it on the broadcast. And he had a really good line where he was comparing the 6-2 score to a baseball game going into a commercial break.
Yeah. Just back and forth, both teams, just brick after brick.
Yeah. We've joked around, like mentioned how many times Missouri goes on these enormous scoring droughts where they bring the graphic up on the screen.
They just started off the night with that.
Yeah.
Let's get it out of the way.
0 field goals made for like the first 9 minutes of the game. Missouri had 2 points from 2 separate trips to the free throw line for a really long time.
Somehow led at halftime.
Yeah, that's what I said. If Missouri's winning at halftime, like, storm the court. Like, this is the biggest win you're going to get the rest of the season.
I love that the fans keep showing up, man. It's crazy.
It is insane.
Yeah.
But, it took the lead into halftime, but inevitably Tennessee went on a 14-2 run in the second half and kind of put the game away there. I guess they're still fighting, though. I mean, how many, like, every game is like this. It's like, all right, they're coming out with some energy. They're playing hard, but can't actually get it done.
Yeah. Dennis Gates had an interesting post-game presser last night.
That's true. Yeah. Dropped the F-bomb.
Yeah, very, very crystal clear.
Yeah. Noah Carter, there's an angle of it where Noah Carter like raises eyebrows like, oh, he said that.
Yeah, he said, we suck at drawing fouls. We effing suck at it.
Yeah. He specifically asked us not to bleep it. He asked like reporters and everybody not to bleep it. But I'm sorry, Coach. It's a family-friendly show.
Family friendly. Not going to say it on this podcast, but I think everyone gets the idea.
Yeah.
And probably agrees with him.
Yeah.
But that seemed a little out of character, did it not?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't know.
At least from who he was last season.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know. I don't want to be overly critical because I feel like it's easy to get negative and pile on when when you're 8-18, 0-13 in conference play. But Dennis Gates has always had a little bit lacking when it comes to the press conferences and, communications with the fans and stuff. Like, not even just like how he talks or anything, but just like not super forthcoming with information.
Just giving you nothing.
Yeah. And like, we never got solid explanations on like Isaiah Mosley's situation last year. We've talked before about John Tonje this year, how at one point his availability, he was as available as he always was or whatever.
Yeah. Like very, very tangible issue going on. He had an injury, but they didn't tell us that.
Right. And so I've always been a little bit frustrated with Coach Gates, public media appearances and stuff, but obviously, that stuff's very easy to overlook when you're going to the NCAA tournament and, sending players to the NBA. When the record looks like it does this year, it's just easier to, I don't know if it's necessarily nitpicking or just like, it's just easier to point out.
Well, it probably is really frustrating for him to have to show up and talk about every loss.
Yeah,
when it's the same story every time, probably.
Yeah.
But, he's been very demonstrative on the sidelines too.
Yes.
Like yelling at the refs the whole game, like
noticeably,
constantly. Like cussing at the refs and stuff. Like, that's fine, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to do, but it's very different than coach than we saw last year. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to kind of see the stark differences.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be interesting to see the behind the scenes, like in practices and stuff, how much, because I feel like that's where I'm imagining that's where you'd want to be most consistent and most like,
right.
Bringing the same energy to your team, and you're going to be changing your energy in practice is going to be to send a message to the team. It'd be interesting to know what things look like behind the scenes there. Looking at the rest of the schedule here, Missouri plays at Arkansas on Saturday, finish out with at Florida, home against Ole Miss and Auburn, then a road trip to LSU to finish the regular season. Assuming they get 14th in the conference, they would play the 11th place team, which is currently Georgia in the SEC tournament. We'll see how it goes. Yes.
What would happen if they go 0-18?
Okay.
Stay with me here.
Uh-huh.
And then they just run through the SEC tournament and win and have to be an automatic bid for the NCAA tournament. What seed are they getting?
I feel like
that's never happened.
The right thing to do would be don't allow that.
We are rescinding
the
this
selection
offer.
committee is like, we don't know what happened in the SEC, but we're not going to let this happen. I don't know, like how low of a seed is a SEC team allowed to receive?
I don't even know if they can get like a 15 or 16, but they deserve it if that happened.
Yeah,
it won't happen. So just never mind.
Yeah, the bottom of the barrel. That's a little bit too mean, but like 15, 16 seeds they'll sometimes get around 200 in KenPom, which
they're down there.
Yeah.
Missouri's headed that direction.
Just to show what the deal is here. Princeton last year, they were 15 seed, but they were 91st in KenPom.
Wow.
So there's often teams that are way worse than that getting into the tournament.
Oh yeah.
We're not going to have to worry about that, but maybe we could beat Georgia.
To start.
Yeah. We'd have to win 2 games. I just can't believe we're back here. Like,
yeah.
I honestly thought the days of finishing in the bottom 4 were over.
Oh, they're back.
They're back in the worst form that's ever.
Even worse than it was before.
Oh. Yeah. Are any of these players going to be back next year? what's the deal with Caleb Grill? I thought he was supposed to be back by now.
I don't know. It seems like it's been a really long time. Is he going to apply for a medical red shirt? Does he have that? I don't know. Does he have that like available to him?
I don't know either. I would think so. So that would mean potentially. I'm looking at last year's team. There's a few players from that team I'd like to have back. Tamar Bates, Caleb Grill, and John Tonje could all return next year.
Give me two of those three guys. I can live with it, but I'd really probably not want all three of those guys to come back.
I bet they all three come back if I'm betting. Actually, I feel like the least likely to come back is Tamar Bates.
Yeah, might be right.
Because he's actually out there on the floor while they're losing.
Yeah, and he's actually kind of good.
Yeah. Yikes. Okay. Now, segue. Coach Gates' boss, he doesn't have a boss anymore. Maybe that's why he's letting loose.
Maybe so.
Desireé Reed-Francois, former athletic director at the University of Missouri, has left for the same position at the University of Arizona, which is shocking, to say the least.
Yeah.
And it's got all of Mizzou fandom, freaking out a bit. Justifiably, I would say.
Yeah.
It's worth a bit of a freak out.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. When I saw this news come across, it was just like, the first thing I saw was some bad words in our Discord.
Oh,
and I was
yes.
like, but I didn't know what had happened yet.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no, like who left or who, whatever.
Yeah.
And so, but I really did not think it was going to be this. This is not the news I ever thought I would see. But yeah, when you go from a great situation in the SEC where you're bringing in like a top 5 NIL donations and you take less money to go to a worse school and a worse conference that's currently operating in a $177 million deficit, it's going to raise some eyebrows nationally. And that's exactly what happened. And Arizona is her alma mater.
From graduate school.
Whatever.
Yeah.
The weather is nicer there, Cameron, but I'm going to just tell you, those two factors had nothing to do with the decision.
Tucson? Is that where? I think so.
Maybe, yeah. Arizona. Somewhere in Arizona.
I don't even...
It's
the
hot.
weather there is debatable, whether that's actually an upgrade.
It's really hot, right?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but some people like having all 4 seasons, right?
You sound like me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, though. All 4 seasons are nice.
Tucson. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's some like northern Arizona areas that are actually
you can get up
chilly,
in the mountains.
a little bit chilly.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was your immediate reaction as you were reading this? Like, it doesn't take long to see that this is clearly not like a career-defining step.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, my first thought was, what do we not know? Mm-hmm. Because this is not an ordinary career move. It makes very little to no sense at all. And it makes less sense when you really start digging into the financial troubles that Arizona's in. I mean, they've taken out $86 million in loans since 2018 and have struggled to pay them back. Like, the whole university is not doing well financially. And that's something that DRF said that she's looking forward to building back. Good luck.
Maybe it's a case of
a little challenge for you.
Yeah, she just, everything was going too well, and she needed to really just see what she could do with an actual rebuilding project.
Right. So I guess, as we've dug into this a little bit deeper, it doesn't seem like there's some, terrible monster in the closet that we don't know about, but it does sound like more like kind of nickel and diming, like, some small friction that has added up between her and the board of curators and all of the administration at Missouri and stuff like that. So, which we'll go into all of that, but I don't think that there's some big news coming.
Right.
But that kind of was my first thought.
Right, and it's kind of like, would it be better if there was an isolated thing that was the 100% the cause of this move? Because the further you dig into this, it feels more like this is just the vibe is
just institutional problems.
Yes, between the athletic department and the board of curators, potentially. So we'll jump into it a little bit here. This is going to be almost entirely speculation based on a little bit of research we were able to do and things we're reading online. But that's the most fun thing to do, is just speculate wildly. So we'll give it our best shot. The last 2 weeks or so, 3 big things happened. Including her leaving on February 19th. On February 5th, the $62 million gift to the athletic department was announced. 3 days later, the board of curators established an oversight committee. And then 10 days after that, she leaves for Arizona.
Yeah, which kind of a thing to keep in mind. Like, the board of curators are kind of like the board of trustees, I guess, for the entire University of Missouri. So they're looking at, the finances for the entire university. But obviously, I think they're involved with the hiring and firing of sports-related stuff a lot. And so I think some people think that it's just the kind of the board over the athletic department, which is not totally true. But I'm sure that the athletic department ends up getting a lot of their focus because of the kind of money that's coming in and out of it.
Yeah, and just like the brand of Mizzou athletics does, on a national scene, tends to overshadow the university,
right,
to some extent.
Yeah, so, from our perspective, it's like, okay, things are going really, really well, and DRF is doing a great job, and I do think that she has done a great job and has really elevated the department in different ways. Spending has gone up, but now you've got this oversight committee that's now kind of just saying, we're going to keep an eye on you, and because of rising spending in the athletics department. So that certainly has seemed to be a piece of the puzzle that has now, in retrospect, raised eyebrows, because at the time it was like whatever,
right?
And didn't really seem to draw a lot of attention. But looking back, it's like,
that was immediately the thing that was first pointed to. Like, this, there's a decent chance this has something to do with what's going on,
for sure.
And yeah, you were actually able to find one anonymous Twitter account that spoke about it before she left and was like, this, I'm not a big fan of this oversight committee thing.
It was so bizarre. It was so prophetic that it almost read like somebody's burner account.
Oh, yeah.
That knew more about it than the public could possibly even know, and which could be true. I don't know. But it was just an anonymous Twitter account that was going on and on about how the oversight committee was a bad idea.
So I'm going to read just a little bit of the committee's description from ColumbiaMissourian.com. Quote, "We are aware of the fundamental aspects of college athletics are undergoing significant and ongoing changes. These include, but are not limited to, shifts in athlete acquisition and retention methods and costs, the changing landscape of coach salaries and mobility, as well as the rising expenses associated with maintaining, upgrading, and constructing facilities. These changes bring about various challenges with broader implications." And that little bit there, end quote, that little bit and more really does read like the job of the athletic director. And so there was a pretty nasty vocal part of Mizzou Twitter that just went kind of berserk mode on the board of curators. Maybe that's warranted. People were being a little too nasty, though, in my opinion. But I get it. The board of curators sets up this committee, this oversight committee, over the athletic department, and the description of it reads like the job description of the athletic director.
Right.
That's a red flag.
And to an athletic director that seemingly is doing a very, very good job, better than we've maybe ever seen.
Yeah.
From everything's going really well, and she seems like she's forward thinking and she's pushing the boundaries, and we're listening to the fans and all of this stuff. Yeah. So why?
As soon as she came on, there was a lot of messaging, asking fans to review the stadium features and what kind of stuff do you want to see.
And those some of those changes have been made. They followed through on it.
Yeah.
And that's not always common with athletics departments or from administration.
Yeah, and just her visibility and seeming she always seemed very hands-on to me.
Oh yeah,
from afar. It looked,
for sure.
I mean, think about her walking her and Dennis Gates walking Isaiah Mosley out at senior night.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah, she's always at the games, very, very visible, even on TV. That you'll see her. Yeah, I thought that was like a rare thing, I think, for ADs to some extent. And yeah, even at like football games, like we'd be tailgating, we see her like drive by and stuff, just waving to the fans. Yeah, she did a phenomenal job with seemingly very approachable and like just listening to the fans.
Well, so that makes us sound very anti-board of curators here. Is that? But
yeah, I think basically what we're doing is going chronologically through like our reaction to the news, and because we were kind of like going through these exact thoughts with everybody. Like, why did the board do this? Why would they do this?
And I'm not necessarily like, you look at who makes up the board of curators. They're like, I don't know. These folks don't seem like they're the most in touch with the college experience.
Like random investors or just
half of them are lawyers,
people that just own stuff,
which makes sense. Mizzou Law School or whatever. But it just it didn't seem like a group of people who I would be like, these people are going to really have their finger on the pulse.
Right. Well, I think that's
they maybe have their finger on the pulse of like the movers and shakers in the state of Missouri,
right?
Which is a big deal.
And they're very, very focused about the finances and the budget of the department, which that's a traditional AD would have that focus. And it's hard to find somebody that can maybe balance both of those initiatives, kind of making life seem like a party like DRF did, and also balancing the finances. And so I feel like you maybe have two different parties here that have very different interests in mind.
Yeah. And so there is an aspect of this as well that has kind of taken the form of, is this the board of curators / football team, Coach Drinkwitz, versus the rest of the athletic department? That's oversimplifying it and making it too black and white. But there was a little bit of rumor, speculation about, there not being a fantastic, like, it just seemed like the board of curators was more interested in football than, and maybe perhaps DRF was, looking more at the entire athletic department.
Yeah, I think we definitely have some indicators showing that, like I said, the board of curators is focused on what is driving revenue for the organization, and that's what football does. And so it does feel like they have been very football focused. There was some speculation that when Coach Drinkwitz got his extension, when the football team really wasn't doing that great 2 seasons ago, that was not like a unanimous. Not everybody was behind that,
right?
But the board of curators were kind of rumored to be the driving force of that. And I think that the board has a strong connection with Drinkwitz, going back to even how he was hired.
That's true.
So it does feel like the board of curators, their focus is football really almost entirely, and the football program is doing very well right now. And so they want to protect Coach Drinkwitz.
And there is a degree of that makes sense, because the football team is the cash cow of the whole operation.
Yeah. Even really from an entire university standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, it's pretty fascinating, honestly, but it is also just like very frustrating, because like, why do so many people need to have things their way or the highway? It just, like, the last 10 years of Mizzou athletics, it just has felt like it's just personality clash after personality clash, where people are just not on the same page.
Yeah.
And it finally felt like everybody was on the same page, and this happened.
At least, from our perspective, the public perspective. But I mean, it's like we're just inventing new ways to be Mizzou'd at this point. Just like, just egotistical administration edition of getting Mizzou'd.
Yeah.
Another thing, you mentioned kind of the potential philosophical differences that maybe DRF had with the board of curators. You mentioned that maybe she had a little bit more of a broad view of the athletics department, And I think one thing that points to that is the facilities plan that she came out with in last October, I guess is when that announcement came out, that they were going to do this huge like renovation project that like every athletics department at Mizzou is going to be impacted in some way. They were going to do all of these like subsequent construction projects and like renovate the facilities and all of this stuff.
And it specifically said, whatever release that was, specifically said every athletic team will be impacted.
Everybody.
Yeah.
And so like, wow, that's great. And you don't always see that, especially at one time.
Yeah.
But so it seemed like a very zealous proposition. So we didn't really hear much about it. Just that was the announcement. Great. That sounds like really exciting. Sounds like a very futuristic project.
But anything, the communications at that time was like, this has to go to the board for approval.
Right. So it goes to the board for approval the next month in November. And the only thing that comes out of that meeting is that the board of curators, they basically greenlight just football stadium improvements to the north end zone. So there was just nothing that's said at all about any other sport. It's just we have approved the north end zone stuff. And then we never hear anything about that either. And that we've never even seen renderings or anything of what that's supposed to look like. And maybe that's fine. But there was clearly, and again, there was like one of those things where it's like, didn't seem like a huge deal at the time because DRF kind of was in support of that messaging at the time, whether she agreed with it or not. She, at least from the public's eye, she was in support of it.
Right.
And they were sending out emails and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So, in retrospect now, it looks like that might also have been another point of contention where the board of curators and DRF just had different things in mind. And the board really just was focused on the football improvements.
That's so bizarre. It just doesn't make any sense to me how they could not figure stuff like that out and be on the same page.
Yeah, I feel like
and
ultimately...
maybe there's probably other things going into it that make all the parties not as inclined to get along as we would imagine they would just naturally want to.
Right. Yeah, I think that's just really my take after all of this is like, I don't know. I'm not going to take a side. I don't know who's in the right, who's in the wrong. Probably everybody to some extent is everything. But it's just disappointing that as Mizzou fans, it felt like everything was good for just a brief moment in time.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like that anymore.
No. Another interesting thing that I found when I was doing a little bit of research was I'm looking at a St. Louis Post-Dispatch article from January recapping the last 3 years of Mizzou athletics revenue and expenses. And one thing that jumped out that they spotlight in the article is a line item in the revenue chart table called direct institutional support, which this article explains typically means a loan from the university specifically to the athletic department. And going back the last 3 years, direct institutional support in 2021 was $1 million. 2022, that jumped to $12 million. 2023, that jumped to just shy of $23 million of the athletic department's $141 million total revenue.
So that's loans they're taking out from the university?
From the university to the athletic department that has to be paid back.
So astronomical spike.
Yes.
And then, but also they're able to categorize it as a revenue.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and it's like a pretty significant percentage of the revenue they're reporting.
Yes. So somebody that knows more than me, just reading this one article and looking at this one table would have to explain that to me a little bit. But I don't know. I could see if, if you run a company and to be completely transparent, I hate that we talk about, this is just the reality of the situation, but I hate that we talk about, colleges like companies, but that's a different conversation. If one of your departments is, you're having to float them these loans constantly, then I could see some other parts of the organization wanting to take a peek, take a closer look, and be like, hey, what's going on here? Do we need to have an oversight committee?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, clearly something changed in 2022, and I don't know exactly when DRF came into the picture, but that seems consistent with DRF's arrival and overhaul of the department. Clearly, a lot of spending was going into things, and that's when the oversight committee, not only are large amounts of money being spent, but not in the way that they want to see it spent.
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because they want to see it all with football mostly.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting stuff. It'll be, so obviously she did not hire Coach Drinkwitz. That was under Jim Sturk, but was like another little board of curators coup that maybe worked out.
I don't even know if there's any current board members that are still serving that would have been then.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I know John Sunvold was at that time,
right?
Which he's obviously not now.
Yeah, that was the rumor at the time, that he's sort of spearheaded the declining the candidate that Jim Sturk brought to the table,
right?
And basically went out and got Drinkwitz himself.
Yeah, but that was kind of the inception of where the idea that it seems like the board has always kind of had Coach Drinkwitz back.
Yeah,
and they've had that connection from the start.
Right. And obviously DRF brought in Coach Gates, who was having an abysmal year, and you never want to see the person that hired you, leave the organization. So that's just, a little bit more uncertainty that we'll have to be dealing with.
Yeah, I don't think they would ever make a change this season, even with new leadership and stuff, but it certainly does make the leash shorter next year, potentially, if things don't go as well. If they don't rebound like we think they should, I think we're going to be having those conversations because, like you said, the person that hired Coach Gates is no longer here.
Yeah. Coach Gates might want to become better friends with Coach Drinkwitz at this rate. That seems to be where you're safest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although, I'm joking mostly, but if it gets revealed that Coach Drinkwitz is the bad guy,
I can't handle that.
TM, the bad guy, that would be devastating. Yes.
What would that even look like?
I don't know. Just if things go really bad randomly and then everything just starts, I don't know. It's easy for me to imagine things going poorly.
You have a few samples of that happening in your life.
Yeah. So,
who did we sell our soul to for one good basketball season, one good football season?
Yep.
I mean, it is just gone.
At this point, though, it's been need 2 good football seasons out of it.
Yeah.
Or else.
Seriously.
Even
the mini movie guy's gone.
That's true.
What is happening, man?
Couldn't even have 2 seasons worth of mini movies. But that's a little bit more foreseeable. The work they were doing. He's going to Hollywood, right?
Yeah. Probably, yeah.
He's going to be making Oscar.
That's the biggest loss of the off season.
Films. Yeah. So now we get to return to our exercise of what was the exercise? You can only keep 2.
Yeah.
Between Coach Gates, DRF, and Coach Drinkwitz.
Oh, man. That was the hardest decision of my life at the time.
Yeah.
Understandably so. I don't even know when that was. Was that after this basketball season had started?
Yeah, barely.
Yeah. And I don't even
now
remember
we could
what
play
said.
keep 1 and it'd be easy.
Keep 1. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, who did we even say? We said DRF.
I think I did. I can't remember. I was too torn. But then after Coach Gates has been doing terrible, then it was easier. But it's okay. It's okay.
I had the same person that asked that question to us, DM'd us on Twitter and said why did you have to say DRF?
Oh,
I think that's
right.
why. Okay.
Yeah.
Now it's all coming back now. Sorry. I guess I manifested this.
Okay. But this is a low point, and we're going to just climb back out of it, and everything will be fine.
Oh, right.
The football team's going to be good. The recruiting class in basketball is going to be good. We're going to get transfers. We're going to get a fantastic new athletic director. We're going to talk about some potential replacements right now.
Yeah.
Who do you got on your list?
Yeah, I got a few names.
All right.
First of all, I think this person has to be like the new age AD, like
Yes.
in the way the DRF was.
Yes.
Like, there is a just little tangent real quick.
Mm-hmm.
There is like a whole thing going on with Missouri State and their athletic director, Kyle Motes. He's been there for a very long time, maybe even a decade or longer. I don't know. And every subsequent year, Missouri State basketball, which is kind of their flagship sports program, has gotten worse. There's been like this big 3-part newspaper article that was written by Wyatt Wheeler, kind of the news leader, sports reporter here in Springfield, just going over how terrible everything is and how little they do to change and how not approachable the athletic department is and the AD specifically. And like, man, like even like using DRF as an example of like what it should look like in his article and stuff. And I think that's so true that we need somebody that wants to make it fun to go to a basketball game on a Tuesday night in January. Yeah. Like,
someone who's connecting to students specifically.
Yes, connecting with students and fans, really fulfilling on promises and making changes and just being willing to, whatever, go with the flow.
And be experimental, try new things. Yes, all of
be
that.
visible. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think we need somebody like that because that really seemed to work wonders for Missouri. Few names that I have, probably a name a lot of you guys are familiar with is Ren Baker. Mm-hmm. He is currently the athletic director at West Virginia, and he was the deputy director of athletics at Mizzou from 2015 to 2016, and he was the interim AD when Mike Alden retired. And so he had like a pretty successful 5 or 6 year stop at North Texas after leaving Missouri, and then he was hired at West Virginia in 2022. So I have, basically all the names on this list have Missouri connections. That doesn't mean the person they hire is going to, but obviously Ren Baker is like a pretty obvious candidate to keep in mind as somebody who knows the department.
Yeah.
And
has the experience.
Has seemed to do well in his experience. Then we've got Doug Gillen, who is the current athletic director at Appalachian State. He was the deputy director of athletics at Mizzou from 2012 to 2015. So assumingly had the job before Ren Baker did. He hired Drinkwitz at Appalachian State in 2019. And
that's pretty like unique characteristic that you were associated with Mizzou and hired the current football coach at his last job.
Right. Yeah. And so, he's really maintained the football program through several coaching changes. Mm-hmm. Like they've kind of just like keep being good and losing their coach to somebody else. So yeah, he definitely has done a pretty good job and has some unique connections to Missouri as well. Next name is Laird Veach, who is the athletic director at Memphis. And no, that is no relation to Brett Veach. Anyways, he worked in the Missouri athletic director office from 97 to 02. And he did several things, including managing the TSF program. Just from reports that I've seen, he's been very progressive with NIL at Memphis, and he's currently pioneering a $200 million football stadium renovation. So obviously somebody that comes in has to be, receptive to the work that Missouri is doing in NIL. Mm-hmm. It's unique. Yeah. It's fast and furious, and it's progressive. And obviously the AD that comes in has to be supportive of that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the last like serious name I have is Sarah Baumgardner, who is the executive senior associate AD at Texas. She worked at Mizzou from 2006 to 2013, and this is from Texas's website, I believe. She oversaw a 15-member staff that raised $84 million for the Going for Gold campaign, and she was an integral part of fundraising during Missouri's move to the SEC.
Yeah, she was head fundraiser for a while.
Yeah.
I think... you said that's the last serious candidate.
Yeah, I had John Sunvold.
Yeah.
That's my not serious candidate.
I mean, he is well loved.
People love him.
I think Sarah Baumgardner jumped out to me Honestly, all 4 of those candidates seem legit.
Yeah.
Like, to the point where I'm trying to think, like, DRF came from UNLV, so not another Power 5 program. And, but she had a track record of hiring good coaches, and especially on the basketball side. And, yeah, I don't know. I feel like
she's got the fundraising experience.
Yeah. And I just would be shocked if it's not one of those 4 names, right? Like, that would be pretty left field when you have 4 people with really legit experience and ties to the university.
Yeah. Unless they're just like, I think a lot of people were, Missouri's AD office needed a change, like especially in like the Jim Sturk era, and maybe even at the end of Mike Alden's tenure. So maybe they just like don't even want to mess with anybody that is like kind of from the old regime a little bit of like how they used to do things. But I agree. I mean, one of these 4 candidates seem like
Mac Rhodes was in there too.
Oh yeah, which of course he went to be like great at Baylor.
Yeah. That's a similar situation where like go to like a university in turmoil and just immediately make all the right decisions and improve everything. Honestly, I'd be happy with any of those. Or like Ren Baker feels like the I feel like he'd be the Vegas favorite.
Yeah, for sure.
Like the betting odds favorite.
Yeah.
But if I was interviewing him, I would interview all 4, and I feel like based on the resume that you just laid out, give me Sarah Baumgartner for the job.
Okay.
I think Tyler said that on Discord, and I agree with him there. But really, I'd be fine with any of those.
Yeah.
Which means it'll be none of them.
Gotta be okay with having an oversight committee.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting part. Is like, does that legitimately make the job less desirable?
Does that go away when like
they bring somebody new in and they're like, oh, okay,
you're good.
Yeah, we don't need to oversee you. Yeah, but like, I don't know. It's not a good precedent.
Isn't the oversight committee just some of the board of curators?
Yeah.
It's like not even different people.
Yeah.
It's just like,
and aren't you already doing that?
Yes.
As the board of curators?
You just had to specifically establish a small group of yourselves to be in oversight.
Like, are you not allowed to see the books already?
Surely.
They're like keeping the books from you, so you have to create a committee, and then that now allows you. Yeah, man, maybe it's not an attractive job after all this.
I got to disagree with that.
Okay.
I mean,
I hope not.
I mean, yeah, I guess. I don't know how common that is. I don't know how common an oversights committee is over the athletic department.
I'll have to do a little research on that.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you next week.
Seriously. But I mean, you've got a football program with playoff aspirations, like realistic playoff aspirations, great NIL fund. You just got $62 million in anonymous donation.
Yeah.
A basketball team that can't go any lower and seems to have
I like that spin.
Good people in place.
Yeah.
I don't know. Better weather than Arizona.
Exactly. Yeah. You get to experience all 4 seasons. You gave me a nice segue there talking about the playoff. Missouri going to be a playoff team next year, we hope and pray. The playoff committee, the playoff oversight committee announced they are doing the 5+7 model for how teams will be selected into the playoff, which means the 5 highest ranked conference champions will get the 1 through 5 seeds in the 12-team playoff. And the 7...
So 2 teams from the same conference cannot be one of the 2 of the top 5.
Correct. And then the 7 highest non-conference champions will make up the last 7 spots. And there is no limit on teams from one conference making the tournament.
And Gary Pinkel is on the oversight committee.
Yes. Not the board of curators oversight committee.
Yes. The college football
Yes.
committee.
Yes, he is on the selection committee. So yeah, perfect timing for that.
Would you be like going hard in the paint for Mizzou if you were Gary Pinkel, or would you almost be like not
Do
distancing
you have
yourself,
to like
but
recuse yourself from?
yeah? Would you be
It's
like,
like conflict of
trying
interest?
to like avoid showing your bias? Like, I think Mizzou sucks.
Me, if I was Gary Pinkel, no, I would not be. I would be, yes, I would be vocally like, campaigning for Mizzou, and then they would kick me off the team. They would kick me off the committee after 1 year, but we'd get good seating out of it.
Yeah,
And maybe we only need it for 1 year.
they're like they go undefeated in SEC play, and Gary Pinkel's like, now what if we just put them in the playoff though, just to see what happens? Like, what seed would they be?
I think you meant to say winless.
What did I say?
You said undefeated.
That is different.
They're undefeated. Let's say we stick them in the playoff. What do you say, guys?
Everyone's like, yeah,
yeah.
that was the plan.
Yeah, Gary, they're in.
Yeah. That was like valiant effort trying to do that callback to earlier in the episode though. Like really you were thinking.
I thought I was doing something.
You were thinking there. Yeah, so that's how the 12-team playoff is going to work.
We better make it.
Yeah. Yeah. So the way it was going to be though, the reason they had to address this is because of the the Pac-12 falling apart.
Yeah. Did you know Arizona is going to be in the Big 12
I didn't know
next year? I
that.
didn't even know that.
Oh.
I read that like today.
Makes sense. Maybe I have heard that.
I can't even stay on top of it.
Did but Arizona State maybe and no. Oregon State and Washington State I think are the only two that
I don't know. I think I read there was 4 Pac-12 teams going to the Big 12. Is nothing sacred
Colorado
anymore?
going back, I guess.
I think so.
Wow.
Yeah. Who knows?
But if they would have kept, they had to address this because they had the 6 highest ranked conference champions going, but now there's no more Pac-12, so it was going to be like 2 of the spots were going to be,
Like Oregon State's just going to the playoff every year.
it would have gone to like the MAC champion and the AAC champion or something.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
Which this past year, like if that was in place this past year, like SMU and Liberty would have made it in. They both lost their bowl games. So can't let that happen. Only one of them's allowed.
Did you know Georgia beat Florida State by like 60 points
I remember that.
in their bowl game?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought I'd bring that up.
Yeah. I saw one, like, I can't remember who it was, but it was like a legitimate outlet was like doing their predictions for next year.
Way
and there
too
was
early.
6 SEC teams in the 12-team playoff in their estimation. I don't even know if that's legal, but that's the way they had it.
I'll make it legal.
Yeah.
6 teams. That means they would have to get like 5 of the 6 at large or 6, whatever. Like almost all of the at large.
Yeah. They must have been doing it wrong.
They hadn't heard about the 5+7 rule
I
yet.
guess maybe not. Forget about that. It's too hard to figure out. I was trying to like map it out and see how it could look, but wait till it's closer. All right. Well, I think we got all of our speculation out on the AD drama. And you got anything else you want to say?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Then special thank you to our Patreon supporters at the $10 level and above. Britt Treese, Brian Smith, Ryan D. Moore, Tristan Ben Smith, Parker Daddy, JD, Tim Keens, Tyler Harsel, Brandon Groffalo, Brandon Hanks, Matthew Tilley, Lewis Hernandez, and Joshua Jacobson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We love you. And you can find this podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or on Twitter at Mizzou Sports Pod. And you can email us at MissouriSportsPod@gmail.com.
You can find our t-shirts and stickers on our online shop, MissouriSportsPod.BigCartel.com.
If they go undefeated, I bet they get the 1 seed.
Seems like a safe assumption.
How long does it take to hire an AD?
3-4 weeks.
We'll see you next week. Thank you everyone for listening. We'll see you next week.